I have an issue where in my career in college football, especially, I lose a little bit of credibility because I am so positive all the time.
Yeah.
And I never attack any players, and I never talk about coaches that should get fired because
Yeah.
like those are relationships, and it allows me to like go to see Lincoln Riley and Kalen DeBoer and all these head coaches and do sit down interviews because they know I'm not going to screw them.
Yeah.
But you lose some credibility of like, are you really that tough of an analyst breaking down the game
Totally.
if you're only talking about the good stuff? And my view is like, it's just kind of the niche I want to be. Like, I'm positive. I talk about the good stuff.
Yeah, dude.
I don't need to talk about like. There's not people talking about who should get fired in college football. Like, I'm
Totally.
bringing out the good stories, but yeah, you do lose some credibility, and like networks, like actual TV networks and stuff, will mention it to me.
Yeah. I have to say, even like as your friend and getting to know you personally, you're kind of like that all the time. Like I'm a Rutgers grad school, and I played my 5th year of baseball there.
Yeah.
My dad went to Rutgers. I grew up. One of the things I love most in sports is Rutgers athletics, New Jersey's state school. And you did Shiana, which was an awesome.
I love him. He's so cool.
He's cool.
Yeah.
And that was an awesome conversation. I call you as a Penn State, like through and through guy, born in Pennsylvania, played for the Nittany Lions, love your relationship with the school. And all you have to do is like say good things about the direction of Rutgers football and Greg Schiano, you know,
Yeah.
or like I call you about, you know, I went to Duke and I call you about Coach Elko leaving us, and like I've got negative emotions in me, and you're like, you know, it's the business, man. Like, you know, Elko's doing what he's got to do. There's a lot of stuff going behind closed doors, and you're extremely positive about it. So
yeah, I mean, I just think throughout like everything I've tried to do in my career, even the adversity stuff, like I just try to be positive to everything, and I think there's times where it can be a negative, right? Where like I view things so positive, I get so excited about things. Like I don't see like the pessimistic side of things sometimes, even like business, where like people present ideas to me, I get fired up about everything.
Yeah.
You know, I'm leaving, I'm like, dude, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Porter, who my co-founder, who you know, he'll be like, is it a great idea? Like, let's talk about this a little bit.
Dude, I went through the same thing where I started working at JDS, and all these entrepreneurs, like they gave me the privilege of being in on investment, decision making, and evaluation from the time I got here, which had I earned it to that point? Not really,
So
right?
cool.
You know, I'm so young and I'm just learning all these things, but they put me in the middle of all those things. Not that I was calling any shots, but they were giving me a chance to learn more than anything, right? And all these investment opportunities are coming inbound, and I love them all. I'm like, this is an interesting idea. This is different. You know, this guy's, look where he's worked. Like he's an impressive dude. And it took me some time to realize most companies fail. Yeah. It's a really hard road ahead. And if you just write checks to everybody that comes in the door, like that's not going to be a good strategy, you know, and there needs to be a lot more thought to it. But yeah, dude, I can really relate to that. It took me, you know, maybe even like a year or two to really figure that out. Welcome back to Inside Moves, episode 5 here at Slam headquarters in New York City. Today's guest is Adam Breneman. Adam is a 2-time All-American tight end. He was at one point the youngest football coach in Power 5 football. He's currently a CBS Sports football analyst and the co-founder of the College Sports Company. Adam, thanks for coming, dude.
That was elite. That was a great intro.
You thought so?
You memorized that thing too?
Yeah, so you're the media guy. You got to we'll give me notes.
That was really good.
I said it to Luke like 3 times today.
That sounded like you practiced it a couple of times, like you were looking in the mirror saying
100%, dude. So, okay, let me start with this then. You're a media guy. We're both former athletes. Do you get nervous before you do this stuff? Do you like, you know, how many podcasts have you done so far?
Great question. A good one to start with. I podcasts, no, not really. Actually, I lie. It's so funny because I don't get nervous for any podcast. It's so like natural. It ends up being a conversation. I think the beginning's the most important. Yeah. Like that was not to like already be, but that was a great first question. Like to kind of like open it up like that. I like to try to like get the flow going early and get personal early and set up the tone of the conversation. But I don't really get nervous for interviews. I did for Lincoln Riley. And it's funny because my friend, you know, the team that was there with me, that travels with me to every podcast, at the end, they were like, they said to me, like, "Are you nervous for that?" I was like, "No, I wasn't nervous." And I started thinking about it, and I was like, "Wait, I was." Yeah. And rewatching it, I was kind of, my questions, I got a tendency to talk more when I'm nervous, so my questions got a little wordier, you know? And I think that was a big one. Like, I didn't know him at all, and it was a big opportunity. The thing I do get nervous for every time is live television.
Oh, yeah.
Live TV is a whole different beast. You got producers in your ear talking. You're getting countdown on air. Like, they're like, "Hey, we're live in 10, 9," like national TV. It's that's what I get nervous for sure. But it goes away after the first. It's just kind of in broadcasting on games. The nerve-wracking part is you do the open on camera. Okay. You know, when you're watching a big college football game, big NFL game, the camera comes on and the guys come on screen. And that's like the producers take that super seriously, and that's kind of, you rehearse it a bunch.
There's no pause.
But that's live. There's no pause. Like, you're live. Once you're off camera, you got all your notes in front of you. I got like boards of everything. I got my laptop up with stuff, with things to say. Like, but the open on camera, you get nervous for. I remember my first one on national TV was CBS. Oh, dude, I was literally like sweating before it, and I'm like, I have to do like, I was like doing my breathing exercises. I'm like, deep breath. You know, ended up going fine, but I get nervous. Yeah,
dude, I get nervous for like anything that matters. I get nervous for it. The way I address it is, I tell myself like I'm nervous, and I feel like
it's normal.
Admitting your nerves rather than fighting them is something that's helped me a ton. And this goes back to baseball, right? Admitting my nerves helps me a ton, and then this is something that my coach always said is, if you are nervous and you want to build confidence, there's one way to do that. It's preparation. Mm-hmm. So like saying something in the mirror, whatever it is, like that kind of stuff helps me.
I think I always try to view the difference between like being nervous and then having anxiety about something. Yeah. They are kind of similar, but to me, I can be nervous about something just because I know it's a big deal and I care. Versus if I have anxiety, I know it's because I didn't prepare. Yeah. Like, I get anxiety if I'm not doing things I know I should be doing. Yeah, totally. And like, so I'll get anxiety if it's like, if I'm calling a game and I had a super busy week, you know, all this stuff I'm doing. So like, I'm like, don't feel prepared come game time. Yeah. I'm like, that's like not a good feeling. Horrible Where like feeling. When you're just nervous, it's kind of, you're used to it. Or, you know, you're about to pitch. I'm about to pitch to someone. I'm like, I did not have time to, who am I talking to? You know? Yeah, dude. And you're like, that's the anxiety I try to stay away from. But I think the nerves, like you said, acknowledging it, it's part of it. Like, that's normal. Yeah. It's a normal feeling to be nervous for big things.
No doubt. No doubt. So what was it like? The biggest crowd as a baseball player I ever played in front of was probably, I don't know, 10,000 people, you know, and like not all the time, right? There's a lot of, you go to a Duke baseball game, there's a lot of those games where there's parents and maybe another 100 people in the stands. Yeah. I loved that rush. Yeah. And it was nothing compared to running out of Beaver Stadium where there's 100,000 people. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of black out, honestly. Yeah. I mean, I also, during that time when I was playing, always felt very prepared for games. Yeah. I think that helps because you have a whole week to prepare. All you're doing is playing football all week, so you're prepared for everything. Yeah, I would be nervous for sure. My nerves would go away immediately once I touched the football. I would always tell when I transferred to UMass and where I really had a good career there for 2 years, and you said was a two-time All-American in the intro. Appreciate that. I always told our head coach, Mark Whipple, who was our play caller, we had a really good offense, one of the best in the country. We just weren't very good on defense, so we lost almost every game. I always told him, I said, like, I need to touch the ball as soon as possible. Yeah. Like, get me the ball in the first, in every game we had. You know, I had like 150 catches in 2 years there, led the country 2 years in a row. Every game, they script the first few plays of the game. Like the second or third play was always trying to get me the ball because I just knew, and coach knew, that like I got so much looser once I caught the ball. You know, because your nerves go away, you stop thinking about the crowd. Even at UMass, like we played at Florida in the Swamp, played us at South Carolina, at Tennessee, at all these huge places. And then Penn State was the same way. You know, that place is so cool. And the thing at Penn State is, you know how much it means to everybody. Mm-hmm. That builds on the nerves a little bit. Mm-hmm. You just know that it's so important to so many people all around Pennsylvania, all around the country. So many people came there to watch you play. Like, it's a big feeling. And, you know, also the time we went to Penn State, you know, was like the darkest time in Penn State history after the sanctions. And
you guys took a risk. Yeah. You know, guys like you and Christian Hackenberg could go anywhere, right? Like, you guys headlined that recruiting class. And that's still at a time where it's like, is this ever going to come back? You know?
We just did an interview with Bill O'Brien, who was our head coach at Penn State during that time. again, like for people that don't remember, I mean, it was Penn State, the Sandusky scandal, and Penn State got some of the worst sanctions in the college football history. People talked about Penn State wouldn't compete with Temple for 10 years. I remember the headlines.
Yeah.
We were committed to Penn State, decided to still go there during that time. I remember Bill O'Brien 10 years ago when we saw him, maybe even longer ago, like 12 years now. It was probably 2012 when we were getting recruited. I remember him saying, like, forget everything that happened at Penn State, everything that's going on here, like all the sanctions. I'm telling you right now, if you come to Penn State during this time, you will be remembered forever as legends at Penn State.
Yeah. And
I kind of remember him saying that to us when we decided to go ultimately. And we were just talking to Bill O'Brien now, 10, 12 years later, catch up the other week, Hackenberg and I. And it was so crazy to like reflect on the last 12 years. And still to this day, like we go to Penn State games.
Yeah.
Hackenberg and I will walk around campus, and the amount of people that stop and say, all they say is thank you.
Yeah.
It's like wild to me. No one's talking to Hack about his NFL career, and no one's talking to me about like, it's always just thank you for what you guys did for Penn State.
Yeah.
And it's just such a crazy thing that still 12 years later, people are talking about that. And I think, to look at where the program is now, I mean, people didn't think it'd be here. And how quickly everyone forgets, right? Like 2017, everyone's mad Penn State only won 9 games. I'm like, well, no one thought we'd be here for a decade.
So what they say, just win, baby.
No doubt.
Just win.
Yeah, just win.
So you grew up a Penn State fan. You're from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And that was always like the target for you.
Kind of. I mean, I like growing in high school when I started to get offers, I was like, I'm not going to Penn State because everyone goes to Penn State. I wanted to go to Florida or Notre Dame or Ohio State. My Final Four were Penn State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Maryland. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, like, I ended up staying home, like a lot of people do. Yeah. Said I wasn't going to, and then Bill O'Brien got hired, and I ended up going to Penn State. So it was a great choice for me. Like, place means a lot to me. Like I grew up a fan, like you said. I grew up watching Joe Paterno, and Penn State's a special place. Like, it's really, really unique, and just like the people there and the community. And I remember when I transferred to UMass. Again, tough decision, but I had my knee injury, and Mike Gesicki came in, and like a New Jersey guy, and was starting at Penn State, and I was like, I'm gonna revive my career and go somewhere else to do it. I remember like being so worried about Penn State fans, what they would say to me, because I was like the guy that like went there during the sanctions. I was such a Penn State guy, and now I'm transferring. And dude, the amount of like support I got from people. One of my first few weeks at UMass, in my locker, I had like a box when I went there one day, and it was a box of letters, handwritten notes from Penn State fans.
Wow.
That like wrote, it was like 20 some letters of like good luck, support, all that kind of stuff. Like the fans were unbelievable the whole time. They still are, like I said.
Yeah, I hate to admit it, man, because I guess I don't know what your side of the fence says about the rivalry, but at Rutgers, since we've entered the Big Ten, you guys are across state lines and kind of big brother to Rutgers football in particular. So like I don't like admitting it, but they got a special thing going on there, and it's good to hear that it's healthy in that sense, right? Where like they care about the player, care about his future, because I would like to say that would have happened across the country, but I can imagine if you're at one of those SEC schools, and you're making that same decision, it might not have gone the same way. You might not have gotten the same reaction.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, no, it's a special place. And I think, the Rutgers Penn State rivalry has been fun to like see it kind of develop. Penn State's in a very unique spot of, one of the slogans Coach Franklin brought in there was unrivaled. Around the building, there's signs that say unrivaled everywhere. And I never really like understood what it meant. I was like, we're better than everybody else, we're unrivaled. I think like the real core of it is that like we don't really have a rival at Penn State. Yeah. Michigan and Ohio State don't consider us their rival. Yeah. Like they consider each other the big rival. Mm-hmm. And then we are a rival, but not the rival. Right. And then Penn State doesn't want to consider Maryland or Rutgers a rival. Right. They want to 100%. Consider. So it's kind of like in this middle of, the Big Ten, as the conference expanded, got rid of divisions. They now have protected rivalries in the Big Ten. Where like, no matter what happens, Michigan and Ohio State play each other every year. Penn State's the only one without a protected rival.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, no protected rival for Penn State. And all the fans were complaining, right, about, what, we're not protected to play Ohio State and Michigan every year. Coach Franklin's like, you think we want to be guaranteed to play Ohio State and Michigan every year? Like, we're trying to win as many games as possible. Yeah. But yeah, it's been fun.
So you touched on the knee injury a little bit. I was telling my buddy here that you'd probably be in the NFL right now if it wasn't for your knees. What happened there, and was that hard for you to step away?
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, it's funny. I just was talking to someone the other day who was asking me about competing. We were talking about working out. I started doing more CrossFit stuff. Someone was like, you should compete in CrossFit. I was like, you realize that like if I could compete in CrossFit, I'd be playing in the NFL. So yeah, I mean, I had a bunch of injuries in my career. Just kind of like always had the injury bug. Had 3 surgeries in high school, both shoulders and a knee.
Wow.
I mean, it was brutal. Tore my ACL in high school and then hurt my left knee in college at Penn State. Had a really unique injury to the cartilage in my left knee at the time. Looked really minor, but some of the doctors were like, this could be a long-term issue for Adam. Same injury that Greg Oden had in his knee.
Okay.
So remember Greg Oden, who ended up never really playing in the NBA?
Sounds like a career killer.
yeah, no doubt. So same injury he had. Not a good injury, like not something you want, but I kind of played through it, played at UMass for 2 years. And yeah, the hard part was, you know, I had just had 2 All-American years at UMass, led the country in receiving, was at the Senior Bowl, was like a top tight end going into the draft, but we knew how bad my knee was. Like I couldn't run by the end of my senior year. I was getting shot, a Toradol shot every game in my butt to make sure I couldn't feel pain. I was not practicing. It was brutal. So like, you know, scouts would come to practice and we'd have to tell scouts like, man, Adam pulled his hamstring. Can't practice today. Because we couldn't tell the scouts that my knee was bad. Because they knew I had surgery and that was a big thing. How's his knee doing? And it was just a big lie of like, Adam's knee's great, man. Like he sprained his ankle. He'll be out a couple of weeks. Really, it was my knee the whole time. Went to the Senior Bowl. Couldn't run. Like, and again, this whole process is like, you're projected 3rd to 4th round pick. We have to get drafted, and then once you get drafted, they'll fix your knee. But now you're getting paid, right? You get your signing bonus, your own salary. If you have to fix your knee before the draft, no one's going to draft you, right? Because they don't want to take on that risk. So it's kind of this like whole game of like manipulating NFL scouts. The reality is they know everything. So I go to the Senior Bowl, and you know, a lot of attention. All the scouts are there, and I'm like saying to my agent and my dad, like, I can't run. Like, you don't understand. Like, I can't run right now. I need knee surgery. And so we can make this whole plan. Like, if you go Google it right now, Adam Breneman Senior Bowl, you would see like Adam Breneman pulls hamstring at Senior Bowl, opts out. I didn't pull my hamstring, and I actually went out there at practice and pretended I pulled my hamstring.
Wow.
In practice.
Wow.
I'm telling you, go Google it. It'll say Adam Breneman pulls hamstring at Senior Bowl. Like, won't participate this week.
Wow.
That was because of my knee. So. Long story short, like it was just, we got to the point, we saw a bunch of doctors, saw Dr. Andrews and like all these big time doctors and talked to scouts. And my agent was like, I mean, everyone knows you can't run. No one's going to draft you. So like at that point, pretty clear that like I wasn't going to get drafted because of my knee. I would get signed. It was like someone will sign you to a camp, but I'm going to need surgery. So I can't play in camp. So at that point, it's like, there's nothing to really do. The surgery I had was like a long recovery, would have been like a year and a half. So like, you know, there's really no choice at that point. And I retired like right before the draft. I always make the joke that like I got as close to playing the NFL without actually playing the NFL, like literally like a month before the draft I retired. It was tough, man. I think it was a hard time because of all the work and the effort I put into it. To not actually reap any of the benefits financially from it was difficult. But as we talked about, like I'm a pretty optimistic, positive-minded person, and as I kind of reflected on it after, you know, the kind of initial, not shock, because I always knew this was a likely outcome after my knee injury started. But after like kind of grieving with it for a little bit, I think like I lived a dream that very few people get to live.
No doubt.
And was an All-American at
it's a good way to look at it, man. It's a good way to look at it.
Met so many people. I mean, look at what I'm doing now. Like so much of that is from my career and playing. And I, you know, got to achieve a lot in my career, even though I didn't play in the NFL. And then two, like I always had things I wanted to do other than play football. I tell athletes, like young athletes, this a lot. It doesn't mean that football wasn't my main thing. But I always was interested in other stuff. Like I was like interested in business. I got my MBA when I was playing. I was following politics when I was playing and like in school. I always knew that like I could be successful in other areas of life. And so it made the kind of transition, like, you know, life's not about what happens to you, it's how you respond to what happens to you. And it was, now I'm on a mission to, you know, maybe this is healthy, maybe it's unhealthy, but like I'm on a mission to like be as successful, even more successful than all my buddies that wouldn't play in the NFL. You know, and like that's my goal now. It's like I know I can do it. I got dealt a certain set of cards. It's now I got to go play the hand.
Yeah, that's inspiring for me to hear, even as a former athlete, somebody who really struggled with like letting the game go. I love to hear stuff like that. That's a mindset you need, man. Hopefully there's some young kids out there that are walking away from something that they called their entire life, their ultimate goal, and get to hear something like that. That's really good stuff.
Yeah, and I think like the opportunities that things give you, like the game gives you.
Yeah.
Especially football, like Division I football, like you get meet so many people, and for me, it's given me so much credibility in what I do, and talking about it, and yeah, man. I mean, I think that like overall, the one thing I've learned as I'm 29 years old now. Are you 29?
29, just turned 29.
Yeah, like as I'm 29 years old, is just that like number one, like the first thing is that like bad things are going to happen in your life.
Yeah.
Like just no matter, there may be a scale of how bad they are, but like bad things are going to happen and you're going to have to respond to it. Like things that you don't want to go your way are going to happen all the time.
Yeah.
Like constantly. It's almost like I almost have like I'm almost like too dark when I talk about it. Cause I was talking to my girlfriend the other day and I was like, things have been going really well. Like, I think something bad's about to happen. She's like, do not say that. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's just the truth. Like,
the truth.
But then the second part is like, I know I just talked about bad things, but like there's an old like story I've heard like people talk about and I won't get into the actual story, but like it's basically the message is that like you don't actually know in life if things are good or bad until you see how they're going to affect the rest of your life.
Yeah, interesting.
And that like you in the moment think something's bad, but you don't actually know if it's good or bad until you see how it.
I know the whole story you're talking about.
The story of the Chinese farmer, is that
exactly?
Yeah. So I was going to say and tell the story, but I don't know it well enough to tell it. So it's like I heard like Sahil Bloom and those guys say it, but like basically like you could look at in the moment. I look at my football career and I'm like, oh, it's so terrible what happened to you when I retired from football. But it could be number one, you don't know what would have happened if what if something worse would have happened if I go and kept playing football. And two, like all the good things that have come from it now, you don't like in the moment it feels really bad or it feels really good. You don't know. And it's up to you to make it a positive at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So how did you did the stint in coaching, you were out there on the gridiron, staying close to the game in that sense, but then ultimately made the decision to go all in on media.
Yeah.
How did that come about, and like how'd you really get going? Because you're experiencing growth. There's like 75,000 followers on Instagram. I'm not on TikTok, but I imagine maybe even more there.
Yeah, I think like 190, some 200, something. Yeah. I mean, it was a long journey. How much time you got? Yeah, I mean, well, you said I spent, like, I got done playing and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I spent a year and a half or so, maybe two, working in Pennsylvania in, like, a marketing agency, worked in politics for a little bit, was, like, really trying to figure out what's the path I want to go down. And then I got a call from Herm Edwards, who was the head coach at Arizona State, who I knew from when I was playing football.
Jets fan here.
Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah. Called me. He's like, hey, do you want to come be on my staff at ASU? And I'm like, this sounds sweet. Like, I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. I was 24 years old. Yeah. So I flew out, moved out to Scottsdale and coached for 2 years. And like you said, was the youngest, got promoted after a year there, was the youngest position coach in Power 5 football. Was really cool. Like, and thought I would do that the rest of my life. And like, again, the story of adversity and things happen. Like, we all got fired. Yeah. We don't need to get into all the details, but like we got, during kind of before NIL started. Yeah. Before NIL was a thing. Yep.
You wouldn't have been fired today.
Correct. We would not have been fired today. But ended up like the whole coaching staff got fired. It was like Herm Edwards, Antonio Pierce, now head coach of the Raiders. Like me, a bunch of guys, the whole staff got wiped out. And at that point, like there were other opportunities to stay in coaching for sure. Yeah. NFL opportunities, stay in college, possibly Penn State. But really, I always had enjoyed media and like business stuff. I really, really, really liked it. I thought I could be good at it. It was also at the same time, Pat McAfee had signed like a massive FanDuel deal, right? And you get these like creators online who are blowing up. The TikTokification of the internet was happening. This is like 2022, 2021, like right in the middle of that. And I started to think and like see a lane where, I had all this unique credibility in football where I was a 5-star recruit. I was an All-American at multiple schools, transferred, was a Power 5 coach, and I'm 25 years old.
Yep.
And I was like, I have all this experience. I know I can like talk on camera. I know how to build a team and build a business. I know all that stuff. And like, I was like, I'm just gonna start making content.
Yeah.
And I'm a big Gary Vee guy, big Gary Vee fan. A lot of people have opinions about him, and I think, but I think like what he talks about, he was a huge like influence in my life. I never even met the guy.
Yeah.
But at that point, like I remember listening to his podcast and stuff, and like he was talking about content, and content is king. And at that point, I was like, man, like I could talk about this game, and there's no one doing it. Like you have like Kirk Herbstreit and Joel Klatt and all these big names, but they're TV personalities. Like who has the attention of Gen Z and millennials online, on TikTok, on social media? And that's when I just started producing content. I remember like I was kind of like figuring it out, like what am I gonna make? And like my third video just went stupid viral.
Nice.
And I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. And I just started producing content every day, and it has grown since then. The one thing I'll say is like of everything I have going on now, like it all comes back to content.
Yeah.
Everyone, if literally the train station on the way here, I got off the train and like some guys like, dude, I love your TikTok videos. But it is always TikTok. Like people are always like, hey, I love your TikToks,
Wow.
I love you. I see you on TikTok. Sometimes I'll hear like podcasts, sometimes Instagram, but like it's all about the content. Like people are not like, oh, your playing career. Oh, I see you on TV. Never television, right? It's always social media. And every opportunity I've had, every source of like revenue I have, like everything comes back to content.
Yeah.
And just like that's where the attention is. And I've become just such a big believer in that content is king, and it's such an opportunity for like young entrepreneurs and athletes and like to create content and build opportunities for yourself.
Yeah, you are unique in the sense that you're on CBS Sports, like you participate in the old guard, right?
Yeah.
The TV personality, but then you also connect with the TikToker, like you're saying. I can't really think of many other people that are doing both of those things.
Yeah.
And that's gotta play out well for you in the long run, because you're building both a relationship with what's been and communicating with like what's to come.
Yeah, I'd say like most people approach media through traditional media first and then build a following from that.
Yeah.
95% of people do that.
So yours was the reverse.
I reversed it, right?
Yeah.
I started with content. Still, content is king. Like I would never sign a deal with anyone that gives away my ability to produce content. I talk a lot with my agent, Mark Lepselder, does a great job, like about staying nimble. We always say like I get deals with TV networks, but they want exclusivity. Like they want you to be tied up. Where I want to be nimble, especially with like the stuff with the college sports company that I have going on, all my business stuff. It's the ability to stay nimble that I've really approached it, and also has given me leverage in a lot of conversations. Whether it's one-off brand deals, whether it's work like TV stuff, whether it's podcast, like all that kind of stuff. When you have the following and you build it without them, it gives you leverage. Where I can kind of like set the hey, I'm not being exclusive with you guys. Like I'm gonna do my own thing. If you want me for 12 games this fall, I'll do 12 games, but I'm not signing anything that gives you rights to sell ads on my stuff, or I'm not gonna, a lot of these networks, like, I'll talk to some broadcasters, like they're signing away their right to like do brand deals. Like, they got to report everything they're doing. They get, that's how like Barstool and those companies, like they all have talent. Like they're paying, I'll talk to some of those guys. I'm like, bro, you could be making way more money. Yeah. Now, again, Barstool builds their brand, gives them a backing, and a lot of them end up leaving. Like I know a lot of guys there, or a lot at other kind of media companies like that. And I'm like, they're getting a salary, but fully exclusive. I'm like, you're on your own. Yeah. Like you'd be popping off right now. You'd be making a lot more money. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, back to what you said. I think that's kind of like the content first approach is the pillar of what I believe in. That's interesting because, I don't know that would be my intuition, that's the path to take. It sounds like the harder path. Like if you can own everything and be nimble, that sounds ideal. Yeah. But a lot of these people, they get put on the platform and that's where their career takes off, and then they end up leaving, right? Yeah. But I guess it's a credit to you to be having all this growth and to never have really been reliant on somebody's
built-in audience.
Yeah. I mean, I think it also just matters on how you actually get into it. I mean, like, it's different if you were an NFL quarterback for 12 years and you're going right to the top of ESPN.
Right.
I'm like, I would have done that.
Yeah,
like
totally.
And like, let's not, I mean, I won't BS too much. Like, if I got an offer from ESPN to go be on their number one primetime show, I would go do that right now, and I'd sign over everything, right?
Right.
But it's all relative, like. And for me, it was, yes, I could have signed off and like gone and joined some companies and like started like lower level TV media, but I didn't want, like, I would rather build it myself than do that. And I have a lot of people who reach out to me asking for advice about. Like how to break into media. They either want to be like broadcasters, anchors, hosts of shows, guys and girls, college, post-college. And like, they're always like, what? That didn't have huge playing careers.
Yeah.
Like, they're not coming at it. Even if you were like an NFL tight end for 5 years, like, you don't have much, like, you're not going to be put on the top of games in ESPN. So you got to break in somehow. I always say to them, like, start producing content, or I'll look at their social media.
More.
Yeah, I'm like, you're not doing anything. And then I'll give them the advice, and then they'll follow up with me a month later, and I look at their social media, and they posted 2 videos.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm like, so you either, 1, don't believe in my advice, or 2, this isn't important to you.
Yeah.
Which one is it?
Yeah.
So like, content's the way to go, without a doubt. And even like, talk about the TV networks. Like, when I got into it, when I met Porter at my co-founder at College Sports Co, when I met my brand deals, my agent, everyone had seen my content. Yeah. It always was like, hey, we saw your videos. Do you want to do this? Hey, we saw this. It's always from the content.
No, you're definitely getting to that point now where I remember when I first met you, I would be like, hey, have you guys seen this guy? My college football junkie type people. And it was, you like hit like 50%, right? Now it's like, if you know college sports and I'm talking to you about college football and I said, do you know AB? They're like, of course I know AB. Like, you've kind of reached that point where you got that market.
It's been a slow grind.
Yeah, but you're right though. Like, if you follow you, it's every day.
Yeah,
it's relentless.
Yeah,
and it's paying off. It seems
we put out a lot of content. I mean,
so
that's
much content.
kind of like a strategy that I've really stuck to, and at this point now, like, have a whole team around me and that produce everything. I mean, like, I'm sure we'll be posting videos as we sit here, right? Like, on social media. Has been like a few different things we always say. I always say to the team, it's like, 1, like, we want people to like not be able to ignore us. Like, you can't open your phone and not see something from us. 2 is like the benefit and the payoff of just showing up every day.
Yeah.
And one thing, like, we may not have the best content. I may not have the best takes. There's a lot better looking and smarter and better speaking people than me. But the one thing about it is, like, I know for the last 3 years, we have posted content every single day.
Yeah.
There's not one Christmas, Easter, New Year, like, every single day we post content.
Yeah.
Testament to the team, really, who's like executing it all. And that's part of a strategy of, like, people always kind of like try to plan their strategy and content. My thing is, I'll just post it.
Yeah.
The algorithm dictates if it's good or not.
Yeah.
If it sucks, no one's going to see it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Right? It'll get 800 views and no one sees it if it sucks. So who cares?
That's interesting
and
too,
and
right?
it's all your ego that, like, I don't want a video with 800 views on my page. Like, get over yourself. No one's looking at your page, checking out how many views you got. Like, it's only you. So we'll post, I mean, literally 20 plus pieces of content a day across platform. Now, those are a lot of the same pieces. So, like, on just Instagram, we'll post 4 to 6 times a day. And I do think that, like, maybe you lose some quality in that. Like, we're not putting as much thought into every single piece of content because we produce so much. But I do think, like, that's kind of this strategy I picked. Like, let's do a lot of content. Every one you post is like an at bat to go viral. So I just kind of think if we post 6 a day, like, one of those is going to do well. You know, 2 of those are going to do well, and it allows you to kind of not to get into the too businessy. It allows you to monetize because you have a lot of assets to sell or sell things in from a brand standpoint. But yeah, I always say, like, consistency is our differentiator. That needs to be the differentiator from a content standpoint.
Yeah, great. Some of the favorite content that I've come to you for is NIL education. I think that you've would you call yourself an NIL expert? You got to be in the 99th.
People call me that. I'm not sure I am.
You got to be in the. It's a crazy thing to figure out. Yeah. We at JDS Sports invested in athletes.org. Jim Cavall and Brandon Copeland.
Love Jim.
Yeah, they are awesome. Jim was a previously successful founder with JDS. When he came to us with this, it was a no-brainer. They're positioning themselves as the de facto players association in college sports, right? So it's something I try and stay on top of, and it's an ever-changing landscape. Like every day there's a new headline that relates to NIL in college sports, right?
Yeah.
You as an expert, where are we today? Can you give us a snapshot? Like when I say NIL, what comes to your mind with today's landscape?
Yeah. Boy, a lot has changed. It's changing daily. NIL, I guess I'll just start at the beginning and try to give a quick overview. NIL stands for name, image, and likeness. Is a relatively new rule in college sports that allows players to make money off basically their personal brand.
Yeah.
Doesn't allow schools to pay the athletes directly. Just allows players to, the starting quarterback to do a brand deal with the car dealership downtown.
Yep.
It allows for Pepsi to go sponsor a bunch of athletes, right? And actually use them in brand and marketing deals. Love it. Everyone was for that, right? When it happened, everyone's like, yeah, it's about time. Like I couldn't go sign autographs and get paid for it in college.
Right.
And you got guys who have no money and they're supporting. So it was a great thing at its surface. And about time that it happened.
Yeah.
Part of the issue with NIL and what happened 2 years ago and what's happened since then is, of course, like any industry, businesses, i.e. the universities and football programs, find a way to take advantage of rules, right? I mean, I don't blame them. I'd be doing the same thing. And what's happened is NIL has gone from pure, marketing brand deals to pay for play.
Yeah.
Where schools and programs and athletic departments pool money together from donors, disguised as NIL, to pay players to come to their school.
Exactly.
So they will get a big donor, and you hear a lot about NIL collectives.
Yep.
An NIL collective is just a business. It's a standalone business owned by whoever. There's some companies who run them. There's some just owned by big donors. Some owned by businesses. That basically is like a pool of donor money, who then pools it all together and then hires the athletes for NIL deals.
Yeah.
So they'll say hey, you got to post 5 times on social media for $500,000.
Right.
Pay the athletes monthly. I mean, a lot of these schools are paying through their collective monthly retainer, monthly payments, actual salaries to their players. The head coaches now with the new rules have been managing the salaries of the NIL collective, which is disguising as NIL. So it ended up being really just pay for play. And then you combine in the transfer portal with it all. So the transfer portal allows players to transfer it away. Really, you saw pay for play really happen, where once a guy's in the portal, it's a bidding war from these NIL collectives. And the issue is, one, NIL collectives aren't real businesses and don't know where their revenue's coming from all the time, and haven't been able to pay what they promised to pay.
Yeah.
So that's been a big issue. Jaden Rashada, quarterback, is suing the University of Florida because he got promised $7.5 million and never got it.
Yeah.
So the pay for play is a major issue there. So now it's kind of been what's the solution moving forward for college sports? And how do you level the playing field where NFL has this salary cap and they have free agency and that this model of Boston College and the ACC having $800,000 to play with and Clemson has $12 million doesn't make much sense.
Doesn't make sense.
How do you compete nationally, and for head coaches constantly trying to fundraise for your NIL collective, which isn't even really part of the university, has been a major issue. And now where we're at is it should go into effect soon. The semantics of the actual settlement, I'm not sure of where it's at today or when this comes out, but there's a settlement. There was a lawsuit. Settlement happened where the NCAA and federal law essentially will now allow for revenue sharing in college sports, which means that schools will be able to pay their athletes directly through revenue sharing. We'll have to, not be able to. We'll have to pay their athletes part of the revenue they're getting. So college athletes are getting paid, is what's about to happen. Actually from the athletic department, right? So Penn State, again, the exact numbers are getting worked out in the settlement. Penn State, for example, the Power 4 school, probably $20-some million that they have to share with their athletes. Now, that's going to come. No one knows what it means from Title IX perspective. Mm-hmm. What percent of that, like Penn State would want all of that to go to football.
Yeah.
Right? But probably can't legally. Probably has to go some to women's sports, some to basketball. So how that plays out is still up in the air. And then also, yes, every school will have a revenue sharing component where they can pay $20 million across the board. But what's still going to happen is NIL collectives and schools are going to want to have a competitive advantage and say, yes, we're paying our athletes $20 million, but we also have an extra $12 million to pay the football team. And so that's the next phase of it. And that's really where we've attacked the college sports company is like that. We're calling it like real NIL revenue, the actual revenue that the collectives and the schools can pay on top of the revenue sharing. Optimizing how schools can do that because now they're still trying to figure out, like Ohio State's still trying to figure out how to end up paying our players more than Michigan does.
Yeah.
So a lot to get figured out. I know it was a long-winded answer, but where we're at is that revenue sharing is happening, which is great. Players are going to get paid from the schools. Still NIL collectives, still NIL brand deals happening. And there are still like real NIL stuff happening. I mean, like, again, there's tons of brands that are doing it the right way and athletes doing great NIL stuff, which is awesome. It just has been the pay for play issue where like it hasn't been fair and competitive for all schools that has caused some of this like uproar with NIL.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, I remember, I'm tapped in to the Rutgers athletic department. Mm-hmm. My dad has been a longtime supporter. And like I said earlier, it's something I care about deeply. Yeah. And I've been in these conversations with, fans, donors, alumni that they don't care. They're going to donate X amount of money to the program every year. NIL happens and they're saying, oh, well, how do I reroute my donation? I don't care about the tax write-off or whatever. I just want to affect recruiting. Mm-hmm. And then the old way, it was I write a check, you build facilities, you can travel better, and you can go get the better athletes, whatever. A lot of people heard that as now I need to figure out how to get my dollars into the pockets of the athlete. Yep. But that's not really what the nature of NIL was, right? Correct. In theory, there should be a bigger pie here of capital coming into college sports, not a redirection of donor capital into the pockets of athletes, right? Yeah. What NIL does is it opens up new revenue streams. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people, interpreted, I think, pay for play rather than marketing deal.
Exactly. And I mean, when you think about it, it makes sense, right? Like it's been the most competitive industry. Like college football has been so competitive for a long time. Of course, they were going to find a way to like skirt the rules and use it to their advantage. Totally. And let's be totally honest here. The SEC has been paying players for a long time. Yep. It's just now legal, and they have a way to do it. Yep. A lot of college football has been paying players with donors for a long time. Coach Franklin at Penn State, I've heard him say, the SEC has had a culture of giving for a long time. But yeah, I mean, it's just a crazy time to be part of all of it, and it's going to be interesting to see like how it really plays out. And then what you mentioned what Jim's doing at athletes.org, and do players become employees? Because like right now they're not, and it doesn't sound like it's going to happen as of right now with the revenue sharing coming in. But and do athletes really want to become employees? Right? Because that means now like whole different world.
Yeah, whole sandbox of
it's going to be interesting. And like again, like with the transfer portal and the NIL part, I was talking to a quarterback that transferred last year, and he was at a Power 4 school making $120,000 a year from NIL at the school. Good money, right? Yeah. For a college dude, one of the best in the country though. And he said to me, if I enter the transfer portal, my number is $1.2 million immediately. Wow. Like that's what he's getting without a doubt. So like, the whole concept of like transferring, pay for play, leverage when you go in the portal and like you get more money, it's kind of like a flawed system. Now, like that is partially how the real world works. Like you have leverage. If you get an offer from another job, like you will get more money. But again, without any guidelines, there's no rules. No one knows who to look to. The NCAA is a joke, absolute joke of an organization, and they can't manage it. So like without any guidelines, it's been an issue in college football, and the coaches, more than anyone else, have been like begging for some regulation and rules again. But in any industry, like the ones that adapt and that figure it out succeed. You look at like Dabo Swinney at Clemson, love what Dabo's done, but like hasn't embraced NIL, and they're struggling. Haven't embraced the portal. where you get guys like Shane Beamer at South Carolina and Coach Franklin at Penn State and Ryan Day at Ohio State. Like, they probably hate it. They're like, I hate dealing with this, but like, let's find a way to use this to our advantage and
no doubt.
Go dominate.
Yeah. So what things would you, if you could wave a wand, what rules would you write right now?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah. I should be making a lot more money if I had the answers to this.
Well, there's got to be some kind of like, you know, I'm a baseball guy. If you're an MLB rookie, that team controls you for X amount of years. You are up for free agency at this many years. You're up for arbitration at this many years.
Yeah.
There's rules written in, and if you play enough, you do some time, then you start to earn rights, right? And I feel like we need to see something like that.
So the most important thing to fix college football right now to me is we need a college football commissioner or leader who is in charge of the game of college football. Right now, it's been the NCAA, right, who's been like really in charge of the rules, who has proven they can't handle enforcement. They can't handle rule enforcement. They can't, I mean, their investigations take 4 years, right? They can't handle any kind of like NIL. Like they botched this whole thing and like just let it come with no plan, just NIL came. So the NCAA's out. The leaders of college football are the commissioners of the conferences, right? Yeah. Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, is the leader of college football. The commissioner of the Big Ten, leader of college football. The issue, though, is that Greg Sankey, the leader of the SEC, is also the leader of men's basketball and women's basketball and track and field and lacrosse. And
interesting,
he's in charge of every sport.
That's a good point.
So why do we not have a leader of college football who doesn't also have to look out for the best interest of, field hockey?
Right.
Like, why is that not the case? It's the only have you ever heard of any other industry that operates that way? So having, and I think that this will happen. Like, there will be a new governing body of college football at some point. Whether it's the Power Four conferences break off and have their own governing body, whether it's Division I, however it works, there needs to be a governing body and a leader of the sport of college football. It's too big, it's too powerful, it's too strong. There's too much of a mess right now to not have that. And I think it's going to happen at some point, because right now no one really knows who to look to. Like, who's making the decisions? No one. Like, we don't know.
Yeah, it's scary. The thing I think about is baseball and minor league baseball.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, there was a lawsuit about the way that Major League Baseball teams were paying their minor leaguers. They were far under, you've probably seen this in the news, they were far under minimum wage for the amount of time they were putting in. It was like egregious, right?
Yeah.
So they eventually win the lawsuit. They back pay players that were playing over X amount of years, whatever it may be. And there are increased standards now for a minor league baseball player. The unintended consequence of that, I think that's a good thing, surface level. The unintended consequence of that is now there's a budget, and this was probably actually pretty close to what teams could afford for this many players.
Yeah.
Now there's just less teams. MLB got rid of a bunch of minor league baseball teams. I think something like 40% of minor league baseball is gone.
Yeah.
So like that's the unintended consequence of that lawsuit.
Yeah.
And when I hear this, it's like, dang, what's going to happen to all of the other Olympic sports? What's going to happen? I think basketball and football, like those are sustainable properties. I'm a baseball player, right? I get nervous. I'm like, is Duke going to be able to fund a baseball team in this new landscape? And I've tried to research and like understand what's going to happen. It's just really hard to tell.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, no one really knows. I mean, I was just I won't say the school. I was at a Power 4 school a few weeks ago and was with their CFO, like talking about some stuff. And I was asking him questions, and I'm sure he wasn't giving me every detail, but like literally has no clue what's going to happen. He's like, we don't know how we're facilitating payments to players.
Yeah,
we don't know. Again, Title IX, big thing that's got to get figured out. Some schools think it's not an issue. Some schools think it is. Some schools, like, they're going to split the money however they want. I mean, it's just, there's so many questions that need to get answered that no one has answers to. Again, like, it'll come, and like the settlement's not even done yet, but everyone knows it's coming. Overall, I think it's a good thing, and I think, like, to backtrack, like I do think that NIL is a good, like, player. It's about time players get paid for playing the sport. Again, like, I made $0 on my football career. Like, literally zero. I lost money.
It's true.
And so I it's a great thing for the athletes. It's a great thing for college sports, and I will say this too, like with all the chaos, college football has never been in a better place.
Yeah.
TV ratings never been higher, never been more fan excitement. The game's never been better, right? Like it was, everyone still loved last season of college football despite the players making a bunch of money. And then the final thing is with like misconceptions about NIL. The numbers you hear about NIL aren't all that's, it's not entirely true. Yes, there's players making a lot of money for sure, but there's not a ton of players making millions of dollars in NIL, like a very small handful. For most players, for most starters at Power 4 schools, you're not making much money. And by much money, I mean like you're not making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now they're making some money, like for sure. They're making $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month. Like they're getting paid, which is good by the collective. But most of them aren't getting. And most of them are getting paid only by the collective and not doing real NIL deals, right? Very few amount of people. I mean, how many college football players have you seen on TV commercials? Caleb Williams,
handful.
Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter. Like there aren't many that are actually getting like real brand deals,
right?
Which is like the real part that NIL was intended to be.
Yeah. So tell us about the College Sports Company. We see at JDS, we are a sports venture firm, sports private equity firm. We see all kinds of stuff coming through the door now that NIL exists and people are having business ideas.
Yeah.
You started one. What are you guys up to?
Yeah, we started a few years ago now, and really have seen this opportunity with NIL, especially in the last like 6 months. So we're a college sports media and production company at our core. Like we produce content, shows, original series to build the brands of athletes, and we build media networks at schools. We have multiple right now. Our biggest one is State Media at Penn State, which we built, own the IP to, do tens of millions of views and impressions online for Penn State fans with the athletes, with a bunch of shows. Christian Hackenberg works for us, who we talked about. Have 5 shows, do events every month. So it's a really cool kind of concept of like galvanizing and garnering all this attention around Penn State with the players and the current athletes, and kind of getting out of the traditional media and like giving the fans what they actually want to hear. What we've proven in a short amount of time is that like if you can garner attention at these schools via these media networks, like you can drive real revenue. Like we've driven real revenue at Penn State just ourselves, right? That's just like we just built State Media without really working with the school that much. Yes, we partner on some of the rights and the IP and things like that, but we built it ourselves. And what happened and what's happened with NIL recently is that we just talked about revenue sharing coming. All these schools at the same time have been raising donor funds to their collective to pay the players. Well, now the schools are paying the athletes directly. So where is that donor money going to go? To the schools. The schools are taking over fundraising for everyone. So, but as we talked about, the collectives or the outside marketing agency of the school is still trying to find a way to raise millions of dollars more, or come up with millions of dollars more to pay the athletes an additional amount of money to compete. They're trying to compete with every school in the country, and if everyone's paying everyone $20 million, well, essentially you're at zero, right? Like you gotta come up with more money. And the only way to do that is to produce real NIL revenue, real brand deals, real sponsorship, real advertising. And our model of what we built at Penn State and some of the other schools of these media networks is a super monetizable asset. So what's happened is schools have started to come to us and say, we want you to build a media network with us. So long story short, we've signed a few schools now. Just signed Louisville. We're gonna announce very soon. Have a few other contracts that have been signed, where the schools are hiring us to build these media networks at their schools, which with their players, with their former athletes. We handle it all, produce everything, produce these shows, produce all this content, produce the events, and then monetize on top of it for their NIL program.
Got it.
So we'll we will, through all this content and through everything we're building, sell sponsorship, advertising, athlete brand deals, sell products, right, like e-commerce through it. to drive millions of dollars in NIL revenue for the school. Because again, they need, these schools and these collectives are trying to find real NIL revenue, not just donor funded. The donor funded model is the old model of NIL. Yep. Now you need something real. And the issue with all these collectives is they have nothing real, right? They've had nothing. So now we have this really cool like a product, essentially a really cool offering for all these schools. And it's been like, the demand has honestly been like crazy of the amount of schools that have seen what we've done and now want to be part of it. And now we're just kind of figuring out like, where do we want to be, what schools are worth, you know, as a business. Like we make money on the upfront fee from the school or the collective, and then we make money on the upside of like all the revenue, similar to like TV business. If you have a TV show, you sell it to a cable company, you also get the upside of the spot of the commercials. Like, so it's a really cool business model for us. And I'll say, like, we've had some iterations. I mean, you've followed our journey for a while, have had some iterations through the years of, you know, always been in kind of the media space, but figuring out like what exactly is the best approach and how do we attack the market the best. And like, this has come together at a perfect time. I think we're uniquely positioned in like with my relationships and you know, our sales cycle has been, so we closed the Louisville deal in like 7 days, right? Like, nice. So like it's been really exciting with this the urgency that's happening, and we're really uniquely positioned to capitalize on it. And then I think I told you earlier, we just closed a fundraise, a significant fundraise, $few million from a couple of different firms and some strategics like Shadowline, Tom Brady's media company, and Kevin Love and some other athletes that have, you know, kind of bought in. So it's come together at a perfect time for us. And now, as you know, we got to execute. Yeah, I mean, that's what it comes down to, is like, can we execute it all? For sure, more content. Like, I mean, we definitely have the team to do it, but we are certainly growing fast right now, and it's been fun. And you know, Porter Grieve, our CEO, my co-founder, has done just an unreal job of just like steering the ship. He's a beast, and like just won't take no for an answer. And I mean, you followed our journey for a while of like of us figuring out what the path is. And you know, there were moments in the last 2 years where like it didn't look all like rainbows and butterflies out there for us, you know, and he just refused to not quit. You know, Porter, we have a line we say sometimes, just don't die. Yeah. And like eventually you figure it out, and like we have absolutely figured it out now, and have not ever been in a better spot. So again, just trying to sign more schools and do what we're doing and build these networks, and then ultimately, you know, produce a bunch of NIL revenue for schools.
Yeah. So school, right? You know, you strike an MG deal with a school.
Yep.
They pay you up front, and then you are splitting the pie with directly to athletes, like one-off deals?
Depends.
Or you're giving it to the NIL collective?
Not one-off deals.
Yeah.
Usually, again, the structure is different in every school because of state law, because of like whether the deal is signed with the school itself or the NIL collective, or like it varies in different schools. Generally, most of the revenue we're producing is going to the NIL collective to pay the players.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And is your goal mostly to activate these kids, get them on camera? I know I saw like a student athlete podcast at Penn State, at State Media. That stuff sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know, you know, how difficult that is and like how much freedom these kids have to say what they really want to say.
Yeah.
But is that the goal, is to put these kids on camera as much as possible? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the goal, is for us to activate current and former players. So like we've kind of build a cool strategy around activating like former players, like recently retired players, to come back and be part of it, that are looking for like their next thing. So we've worked with like Trevor Knight at Oklahoma, and like so we try to find someone like that, a couple of people, former players, to be part of it. And then the current players, for sure, like that's the core of it. And because we're doing it with NIL and with the collective, like we can, in the school, we can have access to all those players. So, you know, we'll launch shows. Like at Louisville, we're going to launch a show hosted with 2 current men's basketball players and 2 current football players.
Nice.
And again, like that's a show. Like at Penn State, we have the only weekly access to Penn State football players. And the cool part is like the players want to go on the show, like where content is now, like they want to do it. And we have the consistent hosts are just Penn State football players. So like right now at Penn State, we're replacing a host that's graduating, and it's like this epic battle on the team of like who gets to be the new host of the podcast that we have. Nice. So like it's been really cool, and also ideal. You know, the brands and the donors that want to like sponsor this stuff. You know, part of it is like real brands like like a State and Liberty I'm wearing right now, like wants to sponsor a bunch of players. And like, yeah, we can sell that across our networks and like they can sponsor the shows and the athletes. We can do one-off NIL deals with them. But you also get a lot of these donors who have businesses that want to be part of what we're doing.
Yep.
And before, the thought of them just stroking a $200,000 check to the collective to pay the players didn't feel right for a lot of these donors, right? But they have the money and they're not all that worried, a lot of them, about like ROI on their money, right? But they want to support the school. But like now, if you have real assets, you can give them and say to a donor, like, listen, I know you gave us $50,000 last year as a donation, but like now we need 200, and like you're going to get X, Y, and Z, and your brand's going to be on these shows, and you're going to be sponsoring these events we do. That's where the real value is, and to have something real and monetizable that donors, fans, businesses, brands all want to be part of.
Yeah. I mean, media is tough business, right? Like going to hunt down advertising dollars takes a hunger. It takes relentlessness.
Yeah.
But what you guys are doing is interesting because you're tapping into this passionate fan base that's trying to give money to this in the most lightweight possible way, like writing a check to an NIL collective.
Yeah.
If you give them something of actual value, like I would imagine there's success to be had.
For sure. And I think that's part of like the model that we've gotten to now is like, and with the demand is like, yes, advertising business is hard.
Yeah.
We've seen it. Like it's tough. You got to sell constantly and you got to perform, which we do, but like it can be tough to scale fast across multiple places, which is like really where the schools hiring us has changed the game for us, because it's given us money to invest in all of it right away, right? We can we'll hire multiple people on the ground in Louisville, Kentucky to work on this brand for us. So that's been a huge part for us, is like, and again, like we don't get here if we hadn't gone through the iterations of the business where like we built State Media on our own, right? Because like, or if we want to, I mean, you know how it is, like some of like that you feel like, oh, like the little failures, or like we didn't make, this was the wrong decision, but like we're not in this spot at this perfect time if we hadn't done that. We've also, again, through like the economy of businesses, like we've learned how to operate very lean. Like, we operate much leaner now with even more to do and a bigger team than we did like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, right? Just because of the nature of the economy. And 2 years ago, anyone you could get money, you could close your eyes and you get $1 million check tomorrow, right? Now it's like it's tough to raise money out there, and it's tough to get, like, money's expensive. So we've like learned a lot through that. So it's been fun, man. It's been an exciting journey. It's been cool. Like that is part of like my what I do day to day. I think I always tell like my friends, and I joke, like people think I'm much more of like a content creator, but like I really that's my day to day, right? Operating the college sports co and really helping us from like I do a lot of like the sales and talking to the universities and getting us in the door there. So it's been good. Again, now we just got to capitalize.
Yeah, I imagine it's landing well with these athletic departments. Like I said earlier, we see a ton of stuff coming through the door, and a lot of it just feels wrong. It feels like pay to play. It feels like a bad new business idea for NIL. One example was basically like a crowd, like a GoFundMe for college athletes marketplace type thing, where you raise a bunch of capital. If the athlete commits to this school, they like get that money. And I'm like, well, is that legal? Is that how it's supposed to go? And they're like, oh, well, we're going to mint an NFT and then we'll send out the NFT. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe that's a creative way to do that. And then I'm like, still, like, this is probably not a good idea. This, on the other hand, sounds organic and like actually what it was intended for.
And I think too, like, as any business, the purpose of any business is like to solve problems, right? Like, how do you solve an issue? And the issue that we've figured out how to solve, and like has again come from the shifts in NIL, is like these schools need to produce revenue for NIL. Like that is kind of the even in the last few months as we've pitched this idea, figuring out how to pitch it, right? And I'm like, the issue that we're solving, and the point in the presentation where you get everyone's attention is we are going to drive more NIL revenue for you while building the brands of your players, while producing really cool content that builds the brand of the school. It's like, okay, well, this doesn't sound too bad anymore, you know? So like solving that problem for these schools or collectives of like, hey, you want to compete with, that's part of a pitch. Like if you want to compete, like you need more money. And they all know that, and they're trying to figure out where it's going to come from. And and two, like we've seen, talking about content and media, like we've seen how the stories and storytelling can change sports, can change programs, can change perception. I mean, look at Formula One and what happened with them. Look at Full Swing, like how that documentary. Look at what Deion Sanders has done at Colorado. So, we believe that yes, it's about revenue and like producing more money to pay your players, but really, like if you can build brand and put your players on a pedestal and make them look good, it's good. It helps in recruiting, it helps in everything. If you have that content constantly being produced that's positive about your program or school.
Do you have anything long form in the works yet, or are you guys thinking about that, or is it more like episodic series type stuff?
About like documentary type stuff?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm saying, podcast, like weekly shows, versus something long form like a Full Swing or a Formula One documentary.
We've been talking about it for sure. Again, I mentioned Shadow Lion that invested and partnered with us in this stuff, who does a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
So we've been, again, it's just super strategic on like what makes the most sense and what school we can do it at. And obviously, that stuff's expensive.
Right.
So just figuring out the right partner and everything. But yeah, I mean, that is part of like what we want to have as our offering, and like what we're bringing to these schools is at some point that like, the Hard Knocks version of college football. And I think there's a market for it. Even miniseries, like you saw, I don't know if you saw what Twitter or X had with the Boston Celtics during their run there. Where they had the series, Shadow Lion produced that. I think there's possibilities for stuff like that. And what you need is access, which we have. Like we can do it. And then two is just like the team to produce it. And we can do that ourselves, and we have the partners to do it. So yeah, for sure. That's definitely a big thing. And that's where like a lot of media is going there. Short form, and now has been a thing for a while. Now longer form is coming back in. Everyone wants a podcast. Everyone wants a documentary. So there's a lot of opportunity. And that's and part of our team is like figuring out what is the best content to produce all the time. That's what they're working on constantly.
Yeah, we'll have to introduce you to Aaron Phillips. He was our first guest here on Inside Moves.
Oh, yeah?
He is running RTG Features, which are mostly basketball stuff to date we've done because of the tie to Slam. But film, TV, financing, and production studio under the hood of JDS Sports. Awesome guy. Yeah, you would have a productive conversation.
Yeah.
So before I let you go, this is awesome, by the way. I need to ask you your college football preview. What's exciting you? What's the stuff to look out for? Who's the dark horse? What you got?
I think the most exciting thing about this season is just conference realignment and like what all the new look of college football. Also the expanded playoff. So like it's going to be an awesome season of college football. But think about USC, Oregon, Washington, UCLA now in the Big Ten. Think about Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC. Think about 12-team playoff. I mean, like those games of Penn State, USC, and Michigan playing Washington. Like those are electric college football games.
Yeah.
I mean, think about what the
Rutgers is playing UCLA and USC this year. I
mean,
think.
Sweet. Like
so cool.
Like I mean, I know a lot of people complained when it happened, and I get it. But overall, like college football, we're only going to keep seeing the nationalization of everything even more. Like, and it's no longer regional sport.
Yeah. It's
commercialized and it's national. So, the Pac-12 was a great conference, but failure of leadership and it died. Yeah. So, like, this is a great solution to fixing all that, right?
Yeah.
Having the Big Ten and the SEC be the two dominant conferences that cover the whole country, with some of the best games we're going to see. I mean, it's going to be an awesome year. And then, again, the 12-team playoff, I think, gives a chance for a real playoff system to figure out who's the best team in college football. It's been funny that college football for the longest time with the BCS and then with the 4-team playoff, like for some reason thought they had the solution for how to pick a champion when like every other league in the country in the world does it. Does a playoff. They just for some reason thought like we had the best solution. Wrong. And it's finally now going to a playoff. So it'll be cool because I mean also. Team like Penn State, the chance to host a home playoff game if you can win enough games. And two, part of my concern a little bit in college football when the playoff expanded, I originally had this thought of like more is not always better, right? And part of the reason college football is so special is because every single game does matter.
Mm-hmm.
If you are any team in college football, you can't lose your week 3 non-conference game, or you may not make the playoff, right? Or you may not have a chance to win your conference championship. I think the 12-team playoff is a perfect kind of middle ground of like, it still does matter, but you also like, you can lose 2 games. Penn State can lose to Ohio State, Michigan, and still, or Rutgers can like, there's still that like every game matters, but you now have a chance for teams, even a group of 4 or a group of 5 team, like a non-power 4 team, to make the playoff and make a run. And I think it's great for the game. I think it's good for the players ultimately to play
it's
more
been some
football.
brutal decisions that they've had to make over the last few years. And I mean, I hear both sides of all those arguments. It's like, how do you not put an undefeated team in? Who'd they play? It's like, we got how many teams in Division I football? Over 120, something like that. Yeah, like trying to narrow it down to 4 and put them in the playoffs really difficult. So I'm excited, man. I love college football. It's the perfect way to say goodbye to summer. Not there yet, but we're getting there.
It's almost there. It's almost there. Well, we have like a month until preseason games, or August 1st is the first NFL game, so first NFL preseason. So it's gonna be an awesome year, and we'll see how it all plays out. I mean, I think it's one of the more like wide open for Big Ten and the SEC. And I'm not even talking about, like, the Big 12 is a great conference still. Like, I mean, ACC, we'll see what happens there. Another thing that I'm sure you guys are looking at, like the private equity part of college sports, right? And what happens. I mean, I'm hearing stuff every day about the athletic
athletes.org, like you can't put on your athletes.org hat without paying attention to what's going on there, right? Like that's potentially your counterparty, right? Like the NBA and the NBPA, it's kind of the parallel path, right? So we'll see what happens. There's news every day. Yeah,
I can't wait to see what ends up happening with athletes.org, just because I know Jim will figure it out.
Yeah.
And like I would never bet against him.
I would never bet against Jim, dude. He's a bulldog. He's like a lot like you in the sense he's extremely positive. And he's going 100 miles an hour all the time. He's got the relationships through influencer with all the athletic departments. He's trusted already. He's already executed. And it sounds like it's in a really good spot right now, covering ground and getting a lot of the stakeholders to agree on things in a place where so much controversy.
Not much agreement.
Yeah,
he's good at that.
Man.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming in, dude.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you, and we'll look out for you on CBS Sports this year. You're going to call some games?
Yeah, check me out.
Check it out on CBS Sports, and we will be watching State Media, check out what's going on in Louisville and everything else at the College Sports Company.
Appreciate it, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, dude. Appreciate you.